Hi, my name is Ryan, and today I want to review some alcohol I'm drinking. It's whiskey, and to also talk about some stuff that's on my mind, like toxic masculinity and other things that I might randomly think about while drunk. So, the alcohol that I'm going to be reviewing is this stuff. It's like, I don't know if you can see it. It's called Redbreast Single Pot Still Irish Whiskey, aged 12 years. And it's a rich mix of dried fruit and spice. It's supposed to be really fancy, but I'm not a fancy person. It was gifted to me by a customer at my job, so we're gonna see how I enjoy it as an unrefined pleb or something. I think I overshot the amount of whiskey you're supposed to drink, but it's fine because I planned on drinking more, so this does the job for me. Alright, let's try it. Let's try the Redbreast Irish whiskey. Well, for one, don't think you're supposed to be drinking fancy whiskey like this out of a glass that I bought at Target for probably like $2. But that aside, I always talk about the glass. The whiskey's good. It tastes like whiskey to me, and that's all that matters. Okay, so one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about toxic masculinity is because I recently put up a poster on the wall behind me. As you can probably see from here, if you're familiar with posters at all, that's the movie poster for Fight Club, which came out, I believe, in 1999, and it stars Brad Pitt and Edward Norton and Helena I don't know how to say your name, Bonham Carter? Helena Bonham Carter. Anyway, the sexy girl. Anyway, it stars her and those other guys. And I recently put up this poster that I've had for like 10 plus years. I've had it since I was a teenager, so it's been over 15 years. It's been over 15 years. And it's been about 15 years since I've had this poster. And the reason why I finally put it up is because I finally acknowledged to myself that I need to honor the time period in my life in which I valued toxic masculinity, and to explore this darker side of myself that I think I didn't really get to explore or acknowledge at the time that I was like obsessed with that. Lesbians will understand this. So like at the time that I first saw Fight Club, I was about 15 years old, and I believe I was either already living on the couch of a friend or about to start living on the couch of a friend, and it was like this party house, or it was about to become a party house. My life was very much in flux, and the movie Fight Club spoke to me deeply. And I know that sounds silly because everybody's just like, oh, Fight Club. That's just it's like when someone tells you their favorite movie is Pulp Fiction, or like their favorite director is fucking... Who directed Pulp Fiction? What I'm trying to say is, it seems like, you know, that's a terrible movie poster to put up for somebody with my politics, right? Like, I'm a dyke, I'm a feminist, like, why the fuck would I put up this movie poster? And here's the thing. There was a time in my life where I did not feel allowed to express my masculinity. And the only way in which I could really even touch at an expression of it was honestly through contact with this movie. Like, this movie moved me. It made me feel something. And it was bad. Like, it's not necessarily a good thing to look at like a bunch of dudes punching each other and idealizing that and being like, yeah, I want that for myself. And you see that they're all men, and because it's the early aughts, you've never met a trans person that you know of, and you are like, okay, so if I'm going to insert myself into this movie, the character that I have to be is Marla, Helena Bonham Carter's character. And it's kind of difficult for you because you want to be you want to be Brad Pitt, or at the very least you want to be Edward Norton, right? But you're watching this movie and you're a girl and you're just like, I want to be close to this kind of masculinity. Well, the only way to do that in the world of the movie is by like having sex with Brad Pitt / Edward Norton. And so for me, this was almost like mirroring what I was going through as a teenager, where like I was starting to realize like that I desired masculinity, but I very much conflated that desire with other kinds of desire. So I very much thought that I was bisexual, and that I thought that I was interested in men. And the reason for that was because I desired their masculinity, but didn't feel like I had access to it for myself. And so it was, honestly, like, watching this movie, Fight Club, made me feel like even closer to it, in a way that the story of the movie itself mirrors this, and how Marla gets close to this world of masculinity, but she's not included in it, she's not involved in it. In fact, she's scorned by it, she's looked down upon by it. And I don't know, it's just like, it's really cool to look back on that period of time in my life and to really start to unravel this web of like masculinity and gender and sexuality, and trying to understand why is it that for so long I thought that I was attracted to men when I'm actually a lesbian. It's very confusing to have come out so late. I really did come out very late as a lesbian. I did come out as bisexual in my teens, but I did not consider, though I did date women in my teens, I did not consider women to be viable partners, in the sense that that's what you did in between the times when you were dating men. Like, it was kind of like, oh, I'll just date a girl for now until I find a guy. And I actually like really messed up like a lot of like good potential relationships with women by like literally just like leaving them for a guy. Like, it happened, like it happened. And what I'm trying to say is like I had a severe problem with like internalized misogyny, and this I really think came from this inability of mine to accept my own masculinity, and in trying to gain proximity towards masculinity, I was trying to push away anything feminine, bad feminine, but while trying to like also embody like desirable feminine in the terms of like what men want. And so I wasn't really living for myself. I was trying to create a character that I thought men would want. And and I really think like Marla is like the epitome of that. She's like this like, like fucked up weirdo that's like down to fuck, but like we'll forgive you if you won't like, seriously date her or acknowledge her personhood. Like that's for many men, at least the men that I was around in my teens and early 20s, that's desirable. A woman who like won't really set boundaries and will just like let you do things to them. and we'll forgive comings and goings and changes of personality, you might say, as depicted in Fight Club. You know, I changed my mind. This is really good whiskey. I really like it. I'm a fan. So, yeah, I think, like, this is still, to be honest, like, masculinity as a concept is something that I'm still trying to unravel and understand about myself. Like, for example, I just bought this leather jacket, and when I first walked into the store, Johnson Leather in San Francisco, the guy there who was helping me, he was very nice, very awesome, and he directed me to the women's section and helped me try on women's motorcycle jackets. What I'm trying to say is, like, this guy in the store, he was very, very kind, but he did not introduce me to any of the non-women's clothes, like non-women's motorcycle jackets, which there were more of in the store. The women's section was much smaller than the men's. Like, it was literally a very small section. And so, you know, he went away to help some other customers, and another worker, another salesperson at the store came back, and he was a much older, I don't want to assume things, but I think maybe gay. I think he was queer in some way. An older gay man came to me, and, you know, he started being like, how about some of these men's sizes? And he you know, put it on me. He was like, oh yes, perfect. And it just felt like the queerness of this man recognized a queerness in me. And he was like, no, like, we'll direct you to the place where you need to be. And that felt very validating, while at the same time, I'm bothered by, I guess, like, the lack of options that are available in, like, the women's section, in the sense of, like, why is, like, 2/3 of the store men's clothes? Like, I don't know. Or at least 2/3 of the motorcycle jackets, because not all of, again, don't get me wrong, Johnson Leather is a great place, and I love that place. I'm so going back there, and I'm bringing my motorcycle friend because they have a jacket that needs to be fitted properly, and, like, they do tailoring and everything. They're amazing. Like, you should check them out. And, like, what I'm trying to say is that while it was affirming, it also didn't feel good. And so that tends to be a lot of my gender experience, is that while being recognized as masculine is in some ways affirming, it also feels shitty, because it's all wrapped up in, like, politics, right? It's just like, why is it that in order to feel affirmed, I have to cross some sort of line and enter into another gender's territory? Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, it feels like there's a part of me that thinks that's not okay. Like, you know, not in a me sense, but in a world sense, like in a big picture sense. Maybe there's something wrong with the fact that there's no masculine section of clothing for women. Like, what about all the masculine presenting women? Like, what about them? Why do masculine presenting women have to shop in the men's section? Like, why isn't in department stores a recognition that gender is fluid, and that sometimes people who are assigned female at birth may not identify as women, but they still have quote-unquote female characteristics, and their bodies need to be put in clothes that are tailored to those characteristics. And why isn't that, like, recognition happening in our society? Like, why is it that when you walk into a clothing store, it's still men and women's? and it's so discreet. It's like if you want anything masculine, you have to cross the line. You have to go to the men's section. And here's the thing. While I love and appreciate and adore masculinity in so many aspects, like obviously like I like it's what makes me feel good like as a person. Like it's like makeup for other people. Like it feels good for me to express myself in this way. Even though I appreciate it, what I don't like is I guess the association with men. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think that masculinity is something that exists regardless of men. Like it's just a thing that we do as people, and I don't think that it's specifically gendered. And I think that I have this theory, and don't quote me on this because like I am not an educated person. I will say that time and time again. I have like a bachelor's degree in a very technical, stupid field that has nothing to do with anything I talk about on this channel. And my theory is that the reason why TERFs exist is because, okay, well, one of the reasons, I'm sure there's many reasons, right? But one of the reasons why TERFs exist, like trans exclusionary radical feminists, like specifically women who are unable to accept both trans men, non-binary people, and trans women, like the whole spectrum of trans identities, they're unable to accept this. And these are women-identified women who are unable to accept this, like specifically female feminists. My theory is that they're like, their concern is similar to my concern. And their concern is that what trans people, especially assigned female at birth trans people, such as non-binary people and trans men, specifically in this particular case, that they are crossing a boundary of gender in order to escape womanhood, in order to gain access to masculine identity, which is not acceptable for a woman to like inhabit in our society. Like women are not sort of accepted as masculine in our society. And you can read more about this in Female Masculinity by Jack Halberstam. It's a wonderful book. I really recommend it. It's a bit outdated in its terminology. I really think that it should be called like AFAB masculinity, because not all people who are masculine identify as female, even if they like were assigned female at birth. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference. And like I think that what TERFs are doing when they see this crossing of boundaries of like of people that they consider to be women who are masculine, identifying as other genders, in their head they're like, you're traitors, because instead of standing with us and being like masculinity is for everyone, it's not just for men, what you're doing is saying like masculinity is for non-women, and so we're going to go over there in order to be masculine. And I think that they see that happening in our society, and their reaction to it is very different than my reaction to it. Their reaction to it is rage. They feel this rage towards the people who experience gender in such a way that makes them want to identify as men or non-binary or anything that sort of like has nothing to do with femininity or femaleness or woman. And they see that and they take the rage out on those people. And it's really terrible, because why would you take your rage out on the people that you think are like suffering under a brutal binary system that is inflicting this change on people? If your theory if your understanding of the world is that these people have internalized misogyny and that's why they're transitioning and identifying as anything other than women, then why wouldn't you support them, but then also work on disrupting the gender binary in order to make it easier for women to identify as masculine without having to transition? Like, wouldn't you be more focused on the system rather than on the people that you think may be confused? Like, I, my theory is that, like, there are some people who have a fluidity to them and they could be, I honestly, like, go either way. And I honestly think I'm one of those people. For a very long time, I really did consider transitioning to live my life as a man. And the reason I didn't isn't because I feel any particular, I don't think that I'm not a man. It's, I don't think that I'm not a man. It's more of a, in my particular case, I can't speak for anyone else. So I can't speak for anyone else. So this is honestly, this is me extrapolating based on personal experience and what I see around me and, the TERFs and the way they speak about people, is they seem to be people like me who experience gender a certain way and this fluidity of it, where you grow up sort of feeling like you're actually a man, and then discovering you're like, no, women can be more than just what I was told. And then you sort of start to identify with that, and then you start to meet other people who they felt like men when they were younger, but instead of growing to accept womanhood the way you did, they grew up to identify differently. They are now men. That is so interesting to me. And instead of being interested by those people, TERFs are angry at those people and they are hateful towards them. And I think that's wrong. And I think that there are a multitude of experiences and ways of expressing yourself and ways of identifying, ways of being. And just because I might have grown up in a similar way to a trans man, does not mean we are necessarily the same. I think that there are huge differences between me and a trans man, even if we had very similar experiences in the ways we were feeling about gender growing up. And I don't think that the problem, it lies in convincing trans men to come back to the other side and to demand that masculine women be accepted. I don't think that's what the answer is. I think the answer is making people, no matter where they stand and how they identify, feel accepted in our society. Literally, no matter what gender they identify as, and no matter how they present themselves in terms of masculinity or femininity or queerness of any kind. And that's the thing that TERFs miss, is they miss the fact that a lack of trans acceptance means a lack of masculine woman acceptance. So until we get trans rights, masculine women are going to have a hard time in the bathroom like I do. Because it happens to me a lot. It's been happening to me a lot now. I went to a pool bar, and I went with a friend of mine, and I was wearing a mask, so maybe that had something to do with it, a mask for COVID. And I had to piss real bad, and so I strutted on into the bathroom, and as the door was closing, I heard the bartender tell my friend, "Hey, your friend is going into the wrong bathroom," because I was going into the women's bathroom. And it was a really startling experience for me. That wasn't the only time that's happened to me. One time I was canvassing for the DSA. We were trying to get the word out about rental assistance for people with issues paying their landlords because of COVID and lack of income during this crisis. And, I was talking to people on the street, telling them about the different programs available for people in different circumstances. And this man comes up, he's 2 feet away from me, and he, looks in my direction, and he's like, "Excuse me, ma'am." And I look at him and I'm like, "What?" And he looks at me so weird. He's just like, "What?" Like, I found out later. I looked around. He's talking to someone behind me. He's talking to a woman standing behind me. And he looks me in the eye and he's like, "Why the fuck would I call you ma'am?" And I just like didn't even know what to say to that, because I've been ma'amed all my life. I'm ma'amed on the phone all the time because people can hear what my voice sounds like. And so to hear someone in public look at me and to uh, treat me with scorn for assuming they were addressing me for looking in my direction and saying, "Excuse me, ma'am." Like, I mean, like, it was a very startling experience for me. And I don't even, like, know exactly how I feel about it at this point in time. I knew I was rattled by it, and I still haven't, like, fully recovered from that experience. It was in particular a difficult experience for me. I also had an experience where I was like, I was in a I was in a dentist's office, and the nurse or receptionist, the person who was taking me to the doctor, came up, called my name, and this is my, I don't know if it's appropriate to call it my dead name since I don't identify as trans, but it's my birth name, and I don't use that name ever, and you will never hear me say it. and I that's one of the experiences that I share with trans people, is that I can't stand that fucking name. And it's a very feminine name, and it was called out. I stood up, I started going over there, and the nurse was just like, whoa, no, I called out the feminine name. And I was just like, in my high-pitched feminine voice, I'm like, "Yes, that's me." And the nurse is like, oh, okay. Like, it took her a second because she looked at me and she didn't see that person. She didn't see the person who was written on the piece of paper. But yeah, so by the way, I'm in the process of getting that name changed. It's a very difficult, long process, especially when you're trying to, like, get together, like, a passport to travel, to, like, go hang out with your girlfriend in Brazil. And it's like, do I get the passport with my dead name, or do I get, like, the name change first and then wait and then get the passport with my real name, my actual name on it? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I wish I knew. Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is, I identify as a lesbian, and lesbians are going to be, at least masculine presenting lesbians like myself, will be harassed in the bathroom just as long as trans people are harassed in the bathroom. That's exactly how long it's going to be. And that is what TERFs don't understand, is that they don't understand that they are fighting against what they believe in. If they believe that masculine women should be accepted, and that should be like a norm, an unquestioned norm, that some women are masculine, then, like, they should be able to accept that, like, some people identify different. Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you can accept the concept of masculine woman, how can you not accept the concept of, like, a trans woman, or, like, a trans man, or a non-binary person? Like, here's the thing, here's, like, how I understand it in a way. This is the way that I would try to speak to, like, a TERF, like someone I knew and was, like, trying to talk down from their TERFness. Like, this hasn't happened before, but because I don't know any TERFs personally, but, like, if I met a TERF and, like, for some reason befriended them, I might, like, try to talk to them about this stuff, and I might be like, "Hey, listen, here's the thing. Would you want a man to come up to you and start identifying you by your vagina? Like, would you want that?" would you want a man to start talking to you about your genitals? Like a random stranger. Like a person you don't know. And like every word that comes out of his mouth is your genitals, your genitals, your genitals. That's what you are asking trans people to do. You're asking them to use words that refer to their genitals. And it doesn't make sense to use language to refer to strangers as their genitals. Yes, unfortunately, that's the way our language has worked in our culture for some time, but also at the same time, that's not really how our language has worked, because you don't actually know what someone's genitals are by looking at them. And so what you are doing when you're calling someone she is you are identifying how they are dressed, and you are taking a measure of their physical characteristics and assuming what their genitals are in order to identify them as she. And don't you think that's fucking stupid? Don't you think it's stupid to assume what someone's genitals are? Because the thing is, in turf world, they think she equals vagina. And so you gotta talk to them on their level, man. Like, you gotta be like, do you really think it's appropriate to just like misgender someone because you want to talk about their genitals? Like even if you really believe like it's important to somehow like differentiate trans people from like cis people, like do you still need to talk about the genitals? Like it's not right. And I think that's the thing that trans people feel. Like, I'm not trying to put words into people's mouths, but people who identify as trans in particular do not wish to be identified. They don't want to be identified in their gender based on their genitals. That's like literally the definition of being trans. Like, you don't want to be identified in a gender sort of way based on the genitals you were born with. That's how I understand it. And I think that a lot of masculine women and a lot of like gender non-conforming people can like relate to this. You don't want to be like identified in a way that like makes assumptions about your genitals based on like how you dress. Like, can you like not do that? Because I don't like it when people do that about me. I don't. So I think that maybe striving for a world where we base less importance on someone's genitals and more on how they would like to be interacted with. How about that? Well, I've been talking for a really long time. I'm sure my roommates are kind of like, what the fuck is this person doing? Just like talking into their microphone about gender all night. But I don't know. I guess I just thought it was important to acknowledge that, you know, I finally put up the Fight Club poster. The Fight Club poster that's been lugged around with me from place to place for freaking years because I was too ashamed of my past to put it up. No, it's time we honor our shitty obsession with gender from when we were younger, and to just be like, yes, there was a time when Fight Club was my only access to masculinity that I would allow myself. And yeah, that sucks. But it's also a really fun movie. Like, have you noticed that? Like, it's actually a fun movie. I haven't seen it in a while, so it's probably, I don't know. Maybe I should rewatch that before posting this, just so like I'm not like actively endorsing an actually terrible movie. But what I'm trying to say is, I think that you can't expect like your past self, your teenage self, to have like known exactly what that person was feeling. You know what I mean? Because I sure as hell didn't. I didn't know what I was feeling back then. Life isn't a young adult fantasy novel. Like, we aren't like these amazing, heroic teenagers who know how to do things and like figure stuff out before they turn 18. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we are not that. Like, we are still figuring stuff out when we're 30, when we're 35, when we're 40, and that's okay. And I think it's okay to acknowledge your past. And it's just like how I always want to tell my therapist when she's like, you're always talking so poorly about yourself. Like, you need to talk better about yourself. And I honestly, I want to give her a little bit of pushback against that, because I'm not talking poorly about myself. I'm telling you that I'm uncomfortable. And there is a difference between that and having low self-esteem. Because acknowledging pain and suffering as real has value. And acknowledging the pain and suffering of that 15-year-old girl watching this Fight Club movie over and over again, memorizing all the lines of dialogue, that's important. There's value in recognizing that. And we don't have to pretend everything's all happy, dandy, amazing all the time. It's okay to admit you're not feeling good. It's okay to admit you weren't feeling good in the past. It's okay to admit you weren't feeling good now. Like, if you're not okay now, it's okay to admit that. You don't need to pretend to be okay just to make other people feel better. And that is something I would like to spread awareness about, just because, in particular to my therapist, it is okay to just like talk about pain. Like, I don't have to be happy to make you feel good. Alright, like, I don't have to stop saying sorry all the time. I'm going to get off my soapbox now, because I think we've veered off the original topic a little bit. But yeah, I think it's okay to do what's right in regards to your own feelings. Like, you know, treat yourself well, treat yourself like a person you respect, but at the same time, pretending you aren't unhappy is not the way to go. Like, that's how you get trapped in pretending to be feminine for years. Like, right? Like, in pretending that you're straight. Like, acknowledge the unhappiness, write about it, journal. That's how you prevent situations like that. That's what I would go back and tell myself if I met myself at that age today. Anyway, almost done with my glass of whiskey. I didn't even pour myself another drink this time. That's amazing. I usually pour myself another drink when I'm making these. I don't know what else to say. I guess that's it. Sayonara.